Breaking news, Sara Duterte, impeachment update May 2026. Full Senate reaction. The Philippines is standing on the edge of a constitutional earthquake. Right now, as you watch this video, a sitting Vice President of the Republic of the Philippines is facing the very real and very imminent possibility of becoming the first Filipino official ever impeached twice. And if that second impeachment proceeds to a full Senate trial and ends in conviction, Sara Duterte Carpio will not only be removed from office, but permanently barred from ever holding public office again. That means no presidential run in 2028, no political comeback, no second act. Just permanent exile from the halls of power she has spent her entire adult life pursuing. This is not a political drama made for television. This is real. This is happening right now. And the moves being made in the next 72 hours inside the halls of the Senate, inside Malacanang, and inside the courtrooms of the Supreme Court will shape the political destiny of this nation for the next decade. Let's break down everything that has happened, everything that is happening today, and everything that is about to explode. To understand why May 2026 is so seismic, you have to understand the full story, the complete arc of this saga that has been building for more than a year and a half. Because this is not simply about one impeachment. This is about the second attempt to remove a woman who was once considered one of the most powerful politicians in Southeast Asia. A woman who won the vice presidency of the Philippines in the 2022 elections as part of the so-called Uniteam Alliance, running alongside Ferdinand Bongbong Marcos Jr. at the top of the ticket. The Marcos Duterte alliance swept that election with a combined popular vote that shattered records. Together, they were unstoppable. Together, they were the future of the Philippines. Together, until everything collapsed. When Bongbong Marcos and Sara Duterte took their oaths of office in June 2022, Sara was named Secretary of Education, a role she reportedly did not want. She had preferred the position of Secretary of Defense. That friction, seemingly minor at the time, planted the seeds of one of the most spectacular political divorces in modern Philippine history. Over the following 2 years, the relationship between Sara Duterte and Marcos's inner circle, particularly First Lady Liza Araneta Marcos and House Speaker Martin Romualdez, deteriorated beyond repair. By late 2024, the political warfare had gone fully public, and the impeachment machinery was set in motion. On December 2nd, 4, and 19 of 2024, 3 separate impeachment complaints were filed against Sara Duterte before the House of Representatives. Then, on February 5, 2025, the House of Representatives passed a resolution of impeachment backed by an overwhelming 215 members of the lower house, transmitting articles of impeachment to the Senate. Sara Duterte became the first vice president in Philippine history to be impeached. But the story did not end there. It didn't even truly begin there. The Senate, then under the leadership of Senate President Francis Escudero, moved slowly, some would say deliberately slowly, refusing to convene as an impeachment court until June 2, 2025, citing the need to wait for an ongoing congressional session. On June 10, 2025, the Senate finally convened, with senators taking their oaths as senator judges, wearing crimson Oxford robes in a moment that was broadcast live across the Philippines, but the trial never actually started. Within days, the Senate voted to remand the articles of impeachment back to the House, citing questions about constitutional compliance. Then, on July 25, 2025, the Supreme Court issued a unanimous 13-0 decision declaring the entire impeachment complaint unconstitutional, ruling that the one-year bar rule enshrined in Article 19, Section 3(5) of the 1987 Philippine Constitution had been violated because the initial complaints filed in December 2024 had already triggered the bar, rendering the February 2025 impeachment legally dead. The Supreme Court was clear. It was not absolving Sara Duterte of any charges. It was simply saying the process was wrong. The charges remained. The clock simply needed to reset. The earliest any new complaint could be filed was February 6, 2026. On January 28, 2026, the Supreme Court en banc dismissed the motion for reconsideration with absolute finality. The one-year ban would expire, and when it did, the forces aligned against Sara Duterte would be ready. They were more than ready. On February February 2, 2026, just 4 days before the constitutional ban officially expired, renewed organized efforts to impeach Sara Duterte for the second time had already begun behind closed doors. By February 6, 2026, the machinery was in full motion. On February 23, 2026, 4 separate impeachment complaints were formally initiated and referred to the House Committee on Justice. Complaints filed by lawyer Nathaniel Cabrera and a coalition of priests and lawyers, among others, carrying with them a mountain of allegations that had grown even larger, even more detailed, even more damning than anything presented in 2025. The charges in these new complaints were sweeping and explosive. The allegations centered on 3 primary areas: the misuse of confidential funds amounting to enormous sums during Sara Duterte's tenure as Secretary of Education, unexplained wealth and suspicious financial transactions flagged by the Anti-Money Laundering Council, AMLC, and, perhaps most dramatically, grave threats made against the lives of President Ferdinand Marcos Jr., First Lady Liza Araneda Marcos, and former House Speaker Martin Romualdez. These were not vague allegations. These were specific, on-record, verifiable threats that the National Bureau of Investigation would later confirm were authentic and showed no signs of editing, alteration, or artificial intelligence manipulation. The House Committee on Justice, chaired by Representative Gerville Jinky Luistro, held its first full hearing on March 25, 2026. Sara Duterte and her legal team did not attend. Her camp criticized the proceedings as a political exercise, not a legitimate legal proceeding, and insisted the proper forum for any trial was the Senate, not the House. The absence was strategic. The defense clearly intended to save its arguments for the Senate, where the stakes were higher, and the audience of senator judges would decide her fate. The second major hearing escalated the drama dramatically. On April 14, 2026, a man named Ramil Madriaga, who claimed to be a former close associate of Sara Duterte, took the witness stand. What he revealed stunned the chamber and sent shockwaves through every political circle in Manila. Madriaga alleged that there had been an explicit power-sharing agreement between Sara Duterte and President Bongbong Marcos, and that when Marcos allegedly failed to honor his end of that bargain, former President Rodrigo Duterte had reportedly made plans to either assassinate Marcos or depose him in a coup. The former president of the Philippines, Rodrigo Duterte, who at this same time was being held at the International Criminal Court in The Hague, was being implicated in an alleged assassination and coup plot against the sitting president of the Philippines. The political earthquake was already registering on the Richter scale. The third hearing, held on April 22, 2026, turned the spotlight on money. The Bureau of Internal Revenue appeared before the committee carrying a sealed box. A box containing the income tax returns of Sara Duterte, her husband Mons Carpio, and their associated firms. The panel voted 21-4 to defer the opening of that box, citing legal concerns about the disclosure of tax records during impeachment proceedings. But the mere existence of the box and the financial picture it threatened to reveal dominated news cycles for days. The Anti-Money Laundering Council had already confirmed, at the beginning of the April 29 hearing, additional Sara Duterte financial transactions cited in documents presented by Senator Antonio Trillanes III during the previous week's hearing. The AMLC's fingerprints on those financial records gave the allegations a gravity that could not be dismissed as political theater. April 29, 2026, was the day the House Committee on Justice delivered its verdict. After 4 exhaustive hearings, after weeks of testimony, documents, sealed boxes, NBI forensics, AMLC records, and witness testimony from former associates, the committee voted 53-0 to find probable cause to impeach Vice President Sara Duterte. Not a single dissenting vote. 53-0. The committee chair, Jinky Luistro, consolidated all 4 complaints into a single unified set of articles of impeachment, incorporating allegations of betrayal of public trust, graft and corruption, and culpable violation of the Constitution. The panel voted 38-6 against opening the sealed tax returns box at the committee level, reserving that exercise for the Senate impeachment court when the case formally reached trial. Then came May 4, 2026. The full House Committee on Justice reconvened and voted 55-0 to approve the consolidated committee report, unanimously, without exception, formally transmitting the entire package to the plenary of the House of Representatives. Congress had returned from a 2-month recess that same day, and the Senate resumed session simultaneously. The entire Philippine government was now focused on a single question. Would the full House of 318 members vote by a 1/3 threshold of 106 votes to send the articles of impeachment to the Senate for trial? And if so, how fast would the Senate act? The plenary vote in the House is scheduled for May 11, 2026. The magic number is 106. Given that 53 lawmakers already voted yes at the committee level, and given that 215 members of the House had signed the impeachment complaint in February 2025, the political arithmetic strongly suggests that the threshold will be met, possibly exceeded by a very wide margin. If at least 106 signatures are already physically attached to the articles before a floor vote, the document can be transmitted to the Senate immediately and automatically, without requiring a nominal floor vote from every lawmaker. The House placed the impeachment on its plenary agenda on May 5, 2026, setting the stage for the most consequential legislative week in Philippine political history since the People Power Revolution of 1986. And now we arrive at the Senate. Because right now, today, on May 6, 2026, the Senate of the Philippines is a pressure cooker, and the valve is about to blow. Senate President Vicente Tito Soto III has made his position unambiguously clear. He is not delaying. He is not hedging. He is not playing politics. On May 1, 2026, emerging from a closed-door caucus among senators to discuss preparations for the trial, Soto declared that the Senate will act on the articles of impeachment forthwith, and that for him personally, forthwith means the following day. The day after the articles arrive, the Senate will move. He said, "If ever we receive the articles of impeachment, we will act on it forthwith." For me, forthwith means the following day. He confirmed that once the articles arrive, he personally will bring the matter to the plenary immediately. On May 4th, Soto doubled down. "We will act on it with dispatch, definitely forthwith." If the House transmits the complaint on May 11th or May 12th, the Senate could convene as an impeachment court as early as May 13th, 2026. This matters enormously because the Supreme Court, in the same week, issued a clarification about the meaning of the word forthwith in the constitutional provision on impeachment. The court stated that forthwith does not mean immediately. It means within a reasonable time, giving the Senate discretion on timing based on the complexity of the case. Soto, as a co-equal branch of government, essentially told the Supreme Court that their definition was irrelevant to him. That decision does not apply to the work of the Senate. It does not have anything to do with the work of the Senate. We are a co-equal branch. In other words, the Senate will set its own timetable, and that timetable, under Soto's leadership, is aggressive. Senator Panfilo Ping Lacson, Senate President pro tempore, offered a more calibrated view. Speaking in a radio interview on May 2, 2026, Lacson noted that even if the Senate convenes as a court the day after receiving the articles, the actual trial proper may not begin until June 2026, because several procedural steps must first be completed. These include issuing summons to the Vice President, receiving her formal reply, and holding a preliminary conference where both prosecution and defense panels may agree on stipulations and exchange evidence. Once the articles of impeachment are transmitted to us, if we follow the processes, we're talking of at least 3 weeks before the actual trial starts, Lacson said. That would put the trial proper sometime in the first or second week of June. Lacson also disclosed that approximately 27 million pesos remains available for the impeachment proceedings under continuing appropriations from the 2025 budget, with only about 512,000 pesos having been spent previously on senator judges' robes, identification cards, and related materials from the first attempted trial. The Senate is financially prepared, it is procedurally prepared, and in the view of its leadership, it is constitutionally mandated to proceed. But the Senate is not a monolith. And the battle lines being drawn inside that chamber are some of the most dramatic this institution has seen in a generation. Senator Robin Padilla, actor, politician, and fierce Duterte loyalist, has made clear that the minority bloc will oppose the convening of the Senate as an impeachment court. He publicly stated that opposing the majority is the fundamental duty of the minority. Ang papel naman ng minority to oppose, hindi lang impeachment. Lahat ng bagay dito, ang trabaho namin ay i-oppose. In English, it is the role of the minority to oppose, not just impeachment. Everything here, our job is to oppose. Padilla committed in 2025 to definitely vote no on Duterte's impeachment, and there is no indication his position has changed. Senator Ronald De La Rosa, former chief of the Philippine National Police, close Duterte ally, the man who oversaw the early years of the drug war, has insisted he will remain apolitical while simultaneously acknowledging his deep personal ties to the Duterte family. His vote remains in question, suspended somewhere between personal loyalty and constitutional obligation, a tension that many observers believe will ultimately resolve in Sara Duterte's favor. But the most consequential voice in this debate, the one that could determine whether the Senate even opens its doors as a court, may be Senator Ping Lacson himself. On May 6, 2026, Lacson delivered a statement that sent political analysts scrambling for their calculators. He did not rule out the possibility that the Senate might fail to convene as an impeachment court at all, if the minority bloc, composed largely of Duterte allies, can somehow convince enough senators to vote against proceeding. Divide the House, Lacson said. If we lose in the voting, then we won't convene. He was explicit. This is not a one-man court. This is a 24-member court, and the majority will decide. The Senate has 24 members. The minority, led by Padilla, is counting votes. The majority, under Soto and Lacson, is also counting votes. The outcome of that count will determine whether the Philippines gets a Senate trial or another constitutional crisis. Former Senate President Aquilino Coco Pimentel III has warned loudly that any deliberate move to block the trial would be both legally wrong and politically explosive. Speaking on radio DZBB, Pimentel said, "That's wrong, because trial shall forthwith proceed. If there would be a motion, whoever files it, that's wrong." He went further, warning that a Senate shakeup, a leadership change within the chamber, could follow if the impeachment trial is deliberately blocked. The political threat embedded in that warning is unmistakable. If senators choose personal loyalty over constitutional duty, the consequences could reshape the internal power structure of the Philippine Senate itself. The legal dimension of this saga has its own subplot, one that runs parallel to the legislative drama and could intersect with it at any moment in the most explosive possible way. Sara Duterte's legal team, led by lawyer Mark Linopoa, confirmed on April 29, 2026, that it will definitely participate in a Senate impeachment trial if one proceeds. They are not running from it. They are preparing for it. POA stated that Sara's personal attendance would depend on the specific nature of each hearing, drawing parallels to the 2012 impeachment trial of former Chief Justice Renato Corona, who was not present at all stages of his proceedings. She will not be present in all the proceedings, POA confirmed. Her defense team criticized the House process as lacking due process and substance, insisting that the proper forum was always the Senate. They have challenged the legality of the House proceedings before the Supreme Court, and they are actively seeking a temporary restraining order that could pause or halt the trial entirely. Lacson addressed the TRO scenario directly. "I believe that so long as the Supreme Court does not issue a TRO, the trial will continue." He was equally direct about the low probability of such an order. "Very unlikely," he said. The Supreme Court, having already ruled on this matter and issued guidance on constitutional interpretation, would be walking into extraordinary political territory if it intervened to stop a constitutionally mandated Senate impeachment trial from proceeding. Lacson made clear that even a TRO would be deliberated collectively by the 24 senator judges, meaning the court itself would vote on how to respond to any Supreme Court intervention. One of the most poignant voices in this entire saga came from Father Joel Sabala, a Catholic priest who served as one of the conveners of the third impeachment complaint. Speaking ahead of the Senate trial, Father Sabala expressed one simple, fundamental hope: that the senator judges would base their decisions on evidence and truth, not on political allegiance. He said he expected political pressure to influence proceedings, but hoped the senators would rise above it. I'm hoping that the senator judges who will take their oath will be guided by truth and the evidence laid out, and will not base their decision on rumors or political inclination, he said. He also noted the frustration shared by many Filipinos that Sara Duterte has consistently responded to allegations through press conferences rather than under oath, where there is no accountability. The sad thing here is that when she answers through press conferences, there is no oath and no accountability, Sabala said. The Senate trial, if it proceeds, would change that. Sara Duterte would be forced to answer under oath. What does conviction actually mean? If the Senate trial proceeds, and if the senator judges vote to convict Sara Duterte, the consequences are constitutionally catastrophic for her political future. Conviction would require a two-thirds vote of the Senate, meaning at least 16 of the 24 senator judges would need to vote guilty. Conviction results in removal from office and permanent disqualification from holding any public office in the Philippines. That means no presidency in 2028, no return to Davao City as mayor, no elected position of any kind ever again. Astonishingly, despite everything, despite the impeachment, the financial allegations, the NBI forensics confirming her threats against the Marcos family, the AMLC records, the sealed box of tax returns, the witness testimony about coup plots, Sara Duterte remains ahead in early 2028 presidential polling. Her lead over former Vice President Leni Robredo has narrowed to single digits, but she is still ahead. That data tells you something profound about Philippine politics and the enduring loyalty of her base. Even now, with the Senate trial looming, her supporters believe she is being persecuted by a political alliance determined to eliminate a rival before she can mount a presidential challenge. And that is precisely why this is not just a legal story. It is a story about the soul of Philippine democracy. It is a story about whether constitutional processes can function when they intersect with generational political dynasties. It is a story about whether 24 senators, many of whom have deep personal and political ties to one family or another, can sit as impartial judges in the most consequential case their chamber has ever handled. It is a story about whether the Philippines, which has been through martial law and people power and political assassination and constitutional crises before, can navigate this moment without tearing itself apart. Here is where things stand on this day, May 6, 2026. The House Justice Committee has approved the Articles of Impeachment 55-0. The plenary vote in the House is set for May 11, 2026. The magic threshold is 106 votes out of 318 House members. Given the political alignments, the expectation among analysts is that the House will clear that threshold, possibly by a wide margin. If and when that happens, the articles will be transmitted to the Senate. Under Senate President Tito Soto's stated commitment, the Senate could convene as an impeachment court as early as the following day, potentially May 12 or 13, 2026. The actual trial proper, with prosecution and defense panels, opening statements, witnesses, and evidence, would likely begin in early to mid-June 2026. The Senate has approximately 27 million pesos in available funds for the proceedings. Senator Kiko Pangilinan, the only lawyer in the majority bloc, is expected to serve as impeachment manager for the prosecution. The minority bloc has 3 lawyers: former Senator Cheese Escudero, Senator Alan Cayetano, and Senator Rodante Marcoleta. The defense will be vigorous, sophisticated, and relentless. In the background, the Philippine government is also grappling with inflation. The bottom 30% of Filipino households are experiencing inflation at 8.5% in April 2026, outpacing the national headline rate of 7.2%. This economic pressure, felt most acutely by ordinary Filipinos, coexists with the extraordinary political spectacle of an impeachment trial that is consuming the oxygen of the nation's political discourse. Senate President Soto has been careful to acknowledge this tension, promising that even as the Senate convenes as an impeachment court, legislative work on at least 17 priority bills identified by the Legislative Executive Development Advisory Council will continue in parallel. Among those bills, the Anti-Political Dynasty Law, the Right to Information Act, the Bank Secrecy Law amendments, and economic reforms affecting everything from the Coconut Farmers Trust Fund to estate tax amnesty. The Senate is attempting something remarkable to serve simultaneously as a court of justice and a functioning legislature. Whether it can do both effectively will itself be a test of the institution. Consider the historical weight of this moment. In all of modern Philippine political history, no impeachable official has ever been removed through the Senate impeachment process. Chief Justice Renato Corona, impeached in 2011 and convicted by the Senate on May 29, 2012, remains the only official ever convicted by a Philippine Senate impeachment court. Every other impeachment, including those of Ombudsman Merceditas Gutierrez, who resigned before trial could begin, ended before a verdict was rendered. Sara Duterte's first impeachment ended not in conviction, but in nullification. Now comes the second attempt, better organized, better documented, with more evidence, more witnesses, more political resolve, and a Senate president who has publicly committed to moving forthwith. If Sara Duterte is ultimately convicted, she joins a very short, very exclusive list of officials in world history removed from office through democratic constitutional processes. If she is acquitted, or if the trial is blocked, delayed, or derailed, the political consequences will also be immense. The Marcos administration's ability to neutralize its most formidable political rival before the 2028 elections will have failed. Sara Duterte will emerge from the ordeal as a martyr, a fighter, a survivor, and potentially the most powerful opposition figure in the country. There is also the matter of Sara Duterte's earlier statement, made on May 16, 2025, shortly after the midterm elections, when she said she would truly want a trial, that she desired a bloodbath. At the time, many interpreted that as political bravado from a woman who had just watched the impeachment against her collapse on constitutional grounds. Now, with a second impeachment looming and a Senate trial looking increasingly inevitable, those words carry a different weight. The bloodbath, if it comes, will be in the Senate chamber, under oath, on the record, with the cameras of the Philippine press corps recording every word. The people of the Philippines are watching. Millions of Filipinos, from Batanes in the far north to Tawi-Tawi in the deep south, are watching. They are watching to see if their institutions work. They are watching to see if truth can be separated from politics. They are watching to see if 24 senators can rise to the occasion history is placing before them. They are watching to see whether the Vice President of the Republic will finally be compelled to answer, under oath, the questions that have swirled around her for more than a year. The House Justice Committee voted 53-0 on April 29th and then 55-0 on May 4th. The numbers are overwhelming on paper. The legal architecture, built on AMLC financial records, NBI forensic confirmations, sealed BIR documents, and witness testimony, is more robust than anything presented in 2025. The political will, at least in the House and among Senate leadership, appears firm. The constitutional mandate is clear. But Philippine politics has a way of humbling certainty. It has a way of producing surprises, reversals, and moments that defy every reasonable expectation. The coming weeks, from the House plenary vote on May 11th to the possible Senate convening as early as May 13th, to the expected start of the trial proper in June 2026, will be among the most watched, most analyzed, and most consequential weeks in Philippine political history. Sara Duterte's fate, and through it, the shape of Philippine democracy itself, is now being decided in real time. Stay with this story. Because what happens next will matter not just to 115 million Filipinos, but to everyone who believes that in a constitutional republic, no one, not even the vice president, not even the daughter of a former strongman, stands above the law.